I'm here in Minnesota. Looking forward to talking with all of you today.
Hello, and I'm Scott Marvilius, and I'm here in Janesville, Wisconsin.
Hi, I'm Stacy Springer, and I am in Cleveland, Ohio.
I'm Dina Krupka. I'm from New Jersey.
I'm Mary Ducharme in Montana.
We're just having people introduce themselves as they come on here.
All right, Shannon Page in Willis, Texas.
Tammy Cook in Pennsylvania.
Ryan Wojcik, Nebraska.
I'm Alyssa Wern. I'm in Florida in a building with non-functional air conditioning right now.
Oh no!
Yes.
Ick.
So if you hear background noise, it is the fans we are using to try to keep ourselves somewhat happy.
Wow. Oh, ick. Are there kids in the building? School kids?
So this building, no. It's part of the reason I think we fall on the priority list of getting things fixed, because there are only adults in the building, in this building.
And I know we have a couple more people that have joined us. For those of you that are on the QIAT leadership team, can you, let's just use like a thumbs up so that people can identify who we all are, because I think we're about half the group at this point. So it's Joan and Brian and Scott and Shannon and Stacy. Who am I missing? There we go. So those are our folks from the QIAT leadership team, but we are here to chat with you all. I know I recognize many of your names, not just here from AT Town Hall, but also from on the QIAT Blue Book Study Group. We've been using the initials BBSG, like we all need more initials in our lives. But I guess so. We just wanted to open up for people if you had questions or comments just in general before we talk about anything specific. We don't have a great specific agenda here. Yes, that was too open-ended.
Well, this is Joan. I'm thinking about the Blue Book Study Group, and I'm wondering if there's been any big surprises to folks as you have been a member of the group, as you've posted something, as you've seen something that someone else has posted. Is there anything that you go, oh my God, I've been missing that my whole practice, or some of that really resonates with me? Everyone's very quiet today.
It is a quiet AT Town Hall. I know for me, the things that I've enjoyed that people have posted are the documents that they've been using or resources. So I've been trying to keep a kind of ongoing list of what people have shared
That's great.
throughout the we still have 2 more chapters of the book that we've got to go yet. But people have shared some statewide forms, but they've also shared some local forms as well.
So we just started the chapter on administrative support today. So that'll be kind of fun. And I'm wondering, are there any administrators in the group? Brian, I know you're a statewide administrator. Any other administrators joining us today? And then the in 2 weeks, we'll be jumping into the chapter on professional development, which is really, in my way of thinking, one of the most fun ones, because what do? We all do professional development. We all participate in professional development, just like this, or in a variety of other ways. I like this because it's, kind of self-driven and really turns into adult learning kind of strategies. So we have 2 really fun chapters coming up, or in process now and coming up. It's interesting because these are the 2 indicator areas that don't talk about services to kids. Everything else is all about how do we serve kids? How do we best serve kids? How do we support kids? This is how do we support the educators? How do we support us in the front lines? And then how do we support our colleagues in making sure that they have the skills, knowledge, and competencies to best serve kids? So those are kind of fun things. Absolutely. And it does build capacity to help us serve kids. We have to feed ourselves, definitely, so that we can do our best job. So good comment. Thank you.
Can I jump in with a quick question?
Please.
Sorry, I was driving, so I had to like stop. Sorry. I have questions going back. So my question would be, and kind of like I think I saw Shannon posted a question or comment about just things being really busy. So that's where I found myself with the study group. I would like to kind of spend some time this summer when I have more time going back through some of the discussions. Are you guys going to keep all of that information up on the page if, some of us who maybe missed some of the different chapters kind of go back and utilize some of those resources?
Yeah, our plan is to not take anything down.
Okay.
So it'll all be there. And I'm wondering, Jennifer, is there anything that we can do? Because I think that you are not alone in that.
Yeah,
I definitely have seen I think after we got to about chapter 4 or 5, we hit that beginning of April where everybody's lives got even busier than what they were when we got started end of January. So is there anything that we can do to help people that want to go through it like that?
I don't know what I don't know. So I don't, I'm not sure what I would need help with until I probably start going through any of it or some of it. But I know that's just when I have the most time to kind of sit down and really devote some brain cells to thinking about some of that, because I'm just so embedded in IEPs and finishing up AT evaluations and stuff right now that I can't tackle anything else. But then I am very interested in the next coming chapters. So maybe I'll try to participate a little bit more and make an effort, more of an effort to do that. But I think in thinking about training, the biggest thing that we are really struggling with is turnover. So when we're thinking about supporting staff, how can we do that with constant turnover, and what systems can we have in place to make sure this constant onboarding of new staff they're getting the training that they need. So that would just be something in the discussion that I would like to see talked about.
Those are really good points. Thank you, Jennifer. One of the things that, this is the first time we've done a book study. Kelly really advocated among the QIAT leadership that this would be a great activity for us, and it has been really fun. It's actually helped me study the Blue Book a little bit more in depth, which has been kind of good for me considering, I've hung around with it for a long time. So we're learning as we do this, and we certainly don't want to make this a one and done kind of activity. So as we learn more about ways to do this, we want to, make sure that we're really useful to the folks in the field. So if there are ideas or supports or things that you think we could be doing better, we'd love to hear about it. We don't take it as criticism. We take it as helping. Certainly Alyssa's giving us a lot of ideas and tips based on the book studies she's facilitated. And we've learned a lot as we've done this. And we want to keep learning and keep doing better.
Um,
Brian, I see your question in the chat. Does anybody have an onboarding education program regarding AT? Are you talking about pre-service or in-service, or what you thinking there?
I'm thinking more in service. So building off of the previous comment that was made, as we see turnover, as we see individuals coming into the profession, one of the amazing things and one of the most difficult things about assistive technology is everybody has different routes to that set of knowledge. And so as people are coming into systems that may have AT policies and procedures established, certain sets of AT tools that are being implemented at larger scales, those types of things. Does anybody have an onboarding program that helps to bring people into the fold, so to speak, regarding assistive technology, devices, services, policies, procedures, those types of things that they have found to be successful?
So I think we do for some tools, like we have district-wide UPAR, Snap and Read, and Co-Writer, and that we have a pretty good system of, okay, you're going to be working with a student that utilizes this, or you as a teacher, like are a teacher and you have access to it. So here's information on that. I think the rest of the pieces, I think like Jennifer said, the staff turnover, and the fact that sometimes it's so very specialized, right? This is the paraprofessional that's supporting this specific student that uses this specific system. And it's almost impossible with the staff we have in our office to have enough time, where our plan is this year to try to do some work in what other things can we make available on an on-demand basis that are like, we have recorded trainings that are like AT 101 or basics of integrating communication support into the educational environment, but seeing based on our most kind of in use things other than the more high incidence disabilities type software, what other things could we create that would be a little bit of a time saver? But the problem is also systemic in that when our paraprofessionals go to orientation, it's district procedural, not like, here are the things you really need to know. So then it falls back on school staff and us in the district to do that on-site, on-job training, which is not something I can and record ahead of time, unless it's like, I have some kids that are transitioning from middle to high at this time period. And it's like, okay, team members who are serving him now, tell me everything that's important for this new team to know, right? I have a couple that we do top 10 things to know about this student or this student's needs. The student writes one, everybody writes one. That helps us do that onboarding training, but it's still so very specialized in a lot of ways because it's an individualized education that we're still trying to find that gentle balance between what do we need to know and what do they need to know that we can give them in a way that won't completely overwhelm them and make them run screening in the other direction from this job?
Yeah, I think Alyssa just kind of like hit the nail on the head as far as like, and I see some of the chats in the chat box that there's lots of, I think, teams and districts that are developing some AT onboarding or AAC onboarding with different types of, in Oakland, there's started a new optional SLP AAC type of mentoring program. But I think all of those siloed separate programs are really great, but the problem is that they're optional. And I think that finding ways to tie into whatever it is that the district is already providing and requiring for new teachers and new onboarding is really what has to be done. I know for Oakland, what we've done, at least for some very broader, more UDL and technology in a broader sense, not some assistive technology, but starting to weave in what is technology for students with disabilities and having that be part of our school site tech leads onboarding process through the Google. And right now it's The only thing that's required is that they go through Google Slides of information and recording, but that's eventually going to get transitioned into asynchronous programs where you then show that you actually watched the whole thing, you answer the questions and stuff right that. But like, it's like, okay, these are the tech leads that are at each school site. So how can we start to get them be aware of what is assistive technology or what is technology that's in the classrooms? And then the same thing for onboarding some of our special education teachers, interweaving AT and AAC into that onboarding process instead of making it be a completely separate onboarding process that then becomes optional, which, as we know, just gets pushed off to the wayside because of lack of time.
It's been my experience that one of the things that is a lot of is a great challenge is there's a decent amount to know about assistive technology, and when you're looking at an onboarding process, it's figuring out and distilling down, what is the most essential that somebody new to the position needs to know right now, as opposed to the whole picture, which is more of a capacity building approach. And as Alyssa had said, how much can you pack in before they run away screaming and going, I'm never doing this? And so, thinking through, from that sort of professional development stance, and going back to some of the things with the quality indicators, which we haven't even gotten into the professional development ones yet in the book study. But how do you distill down what are those essential items to bring somebody into the fold, and give them enough of a foundation that they can springboard and continue learning as they move forward.
Well, and I think too, and something I brought up off of, this Zoom was, thinking about professional development and how has that changed and what does that look like for schools now, where tools like text-to-speech, word prediction used to be solely held in assistive technology and now are available district-wide. And so, yes, it is assistive technology, but also what are the PD plans for the district of awareness of them being UDL tools, and then how that relates to AT. I think professional development in a bigger picture has changed so much, with so much advent of technology, post-COVID, everything else. And we still need there to be specialized assistive technology, training and awareness and quality indicators. But also I think, at least for myself, how I view what is professional development for AT becomes now, I mean, it has been, but even more so becomes now fitting into UDL tools for all students, understanding how technology can be utilized, for students without disabilities, and how it is on a whole continuum, as opposed to, a very low incidence tool that is absolutely necessary, but yet different, per se, in your training and professional development approach.
Mary, I can answer your question virtually and or in the chat box and live. So the UPAR is something that would be set up, and once that administration is set up of the protocol, wherever they are, as long as there's web access, they could complete it. So oftentimes, most of our school-based staff set that up, but if they reach out to me and they have questions, I can set it up and then they can set up their student to do it. I typically try to have them do it while they are at school and not at home. Just so that my staff can be kind of monitoring, did they really actually attempt to read this passage, or did they just play the click, click, click game? And while we can see on the UPAR how much time they spent on the specific passage, those other kind of educator observations are very important and powerful in figuring out what the best accommodation route would be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, are we talking hybrid or are we talking remote? Or for the instruction? Somebody on the QIAT team?
Mary, are you talking about instruction for UPAR or?
No, in general.
I think in general, it's all of the above, right? It's not just one or the other.
Okay, so use of remote is still being used if the person has an extended illness or something like that, or?
And many of us, like I have on my caseload, kids that have always received services homebound and had nothing to do with COVID, right? I have kids that are medically fragile, that their school environment is the home environment.
Right. And then there's also a lot of, if that's the case, then there's a lot of parental, well, you have to take that into account. There has to be somebody on the other end that's going to be responsible to kind of co-coach that person. Otherwise, it kind of doesn't work.
Well, I like I said, I can only speak for myself. I have students that have multiple disabilities. So they usually have either a parent or an assistant. Some of my kids have one-on-one aides, but I've also been consulting on cases where students are, signing into the computer, just like many students signed in during the time of it. So I think.
Well,
I guess it depends on the grade level and the competency level of the student.
One thing, go ahead. One thing that's happened since the pandemic that I've noticed here in Texas is we've seen a lot more virtual schools pop up, virtual, they're public schools, but they're being held virtually as charter programs because parents want that. They don't want to have the fear of losing or having to go into a COVID-like educational setting. And so they're just taking control. And so you've got a lot of these virtual schools. The other thing we've seen in Texas is they found that it actually really benefited some of your rural school districts that were spending, you've got kids spending an hour on a bus to and from. Well, they just approved a 4-day school week in one of our districts. And it's because of the amount of time that they can get so much more accomplished on that virtual kind of training series. And that's another very small rural district. So I think in regards to training, I don't think it really matters where they're learning. I still think that the leadership needs to understand that everybody has to have access to their learning environment, and your assistive technology is going to do that. We need training in order to really meet the diverse needs of the students. So I think we've got to be really cautious about just providing training to check it off the box. And I'd be a perfect example. I got into assistive technology. I took my first course back in 2001 at the Education Service Center, and we were a team of 6. Well, they didn't really think about the members on that team. And so the next year, 5 of the members dropped off. So I was a team of 1. So then they fit me on a new team, and I was a team of 6. And then 4 of those people dropped off. And then the 2 of us went on to the following year. And so maybe it's thinking about who you're putting on the teams. And I know for a fact, they were just like, who wants to be on it? Well, a lot of people are enthusiastic in the beginning, but then it might not really be their interest. So maybe having some kind of an interview process on who's going to be moving forward so that we're not losing, like, so if you think about it, in the 3 training groups that I started with 6 people, I'm the only one who finished up. So that's not a really good, that's 1 out of 18 of us that actually went on with all of that really extensive training that they were providing. So it worked really well for me because I've got the training and I got to go through the training series multiple times. And as we talked about in Elisa's training, it's coming back around and around, and every time you pick up something new and you build on those skill sets. So how can we take that and really have a process where we pull in good people from the beginning who are going to be invested so that we're not wasting time training 17 people that are going to drop off and go in another direction? And then how do we build that capacity and really get effective teams on every campus? And that's where this leadership module, I think, is really important, is asking those questions and how do we get so that it's not that team of one, but we've talked a lot about really building that capacity of having processes that keep it going. And I don't see that. I see you get people that are excited and love what they do, but then they move to a new school and everything that they've done in that school is dissolved because there's nobody there to take it over. And so that's not capacity building. That's one very enthusiastic, wonderful person that is holding it all together. And we can't have that model because it's not sustainable.
I think that's one of the things I've been the most worried about as I, track practice and think about leadership and sustainable practice, is with the huge turnover in educators right now, and special educators in particular. Just how do we keep sustainable practice? How do we keep folks engaged? I think about the teams that I've been supporting over the last couple of years, and I've had at least a 50% turnover across all of the teams. And so there's always sort of that going back to basics, starting over again, which tends to frustrate the folks who do manage to stick it out, but still very, very critical for the new members of the team. So I'm wondering, what ideas do you have for keeping the experienced person like Shannon engaged and involved? Like she said, you're always, whenever you go back to those basics, you still pick up something new. I remember going to Joy Zabala's training on the SET framework, God knows how many times. And every time I'd come up with going, oh, that's what that meant. However, there's still things that you need that after a while you stop listening because you've heard it a lot of times. So how do we keep that passion going for the experienced member while we still bring those emerging practitioners along? What kind of ideas do you have and supports that we might all be able to replicate?
So one thing I have to add to that is I think administrative buy-in makes a huge difference. So we have spent time training a lot of our administrators, circling them into conversations. We call them, they are the captains of their own ship in our district. And so they have more say in their buildings, the building principals do, than our special ed administrators do in many cases. And so when we're thinking about implementing any assistive technology, I mean, my primary is AAC, but when we're implementing those things, we are making sure that they know what modeling, best practices of modeling are. They know when a student's device is breaking and they're going without it. They have been involved in a lot of that same professional development. And I think the buy-in for our staff, when they see their administrator commenting on a Jamboard or watching the same trainings they're watching, that gets them to make sure they're implementing it in their classrooms. And then those administrators are going into classrooms and they're asking questions, knowledgeable questions about why aren't they using this tool? They're sometimes making the referrals to us. And I think that has made, when we kind of figured out that piece, that administrative buy-in, and every administrator is different, and we are seeing turnover with administrators as well. So, it comes with its own challenges, but I think that has made a huge, huge difference for us. And I think that should be a big piece of implementation.
Absolutely. I do a lot of thinking and talking about sustainable practice, and people like to have graphics. So I always talk about the triangle graphic, where one leg of the triangle is the professional, the AT person's own skill and knowledge. The second leg of the triangle, or the second branch, is the fact that the folks that they're out there working with want to be engaged and involved. Because it's one thing if you do all your professional development, you do all your training, and you do all your workshops, and they don't give a rip because they're so overwhelmed with 37 other things that they have to do. And the third leg, the base, the absolutely foundational piece, is that administrative support. Because if they say, this is really critical, this is important, you guys over here who need to be paying attention and engage and invest in all the skills and knowledge that Jennifer is bringing to the table, this is important, so pay attention. So you have to have those three pieces of the triangle to have sustainable practice. The administrator, someone who knows about the devices and walks in and says, why isn't this going on? That's like the rock star administrator. And I want to have that person in every building. That would be absolutely wonderful. What I tell folks, that the bare minimum is that they say to the rest of their practitioners, this AT thing is critical, it's important. Here is your leadership team about AT. Here are the folks who are going to help you gain the skills and knowledge so you can implement it. And then if they can do even more, that'd be great. Yes, I do have a link to the triangle model. I use it a lot in trainings. I'll see if I can dig it out and share it while we're having this conversation.
And I think another thing to note is when the administrators are more involved, I mean, a lot of times when there's building level trainings going on, if they know what you're trying to implement in that classroom and you're like, hey, we don't want them to be a part of this, building level training, could we pull them on this day? They tend to be more supportive of things like that. Even like from a budgetary standpoint, we wanted our paraprofessionals coming in a half an hour early and being a part of our weekly meetings. And, we were able to go to different administrators and say, hey, can you find this money in your budget? And they've been supportive. So I just think, there's so many benefits to having that administrative support that should really be a critical component and not a chapter in the quiet book to get looked over, because I think, building that capacity really goes back to that support that you get from your admin team.
One of the things I often saw in larger districts is they would have trainings on your assistive technology, and then you'll have your trainings on your UDL, but it's almost like it's separate. And so when you have these high turnovers, we're training our new teachers on curriculum. And we really need to, during those curriculum trainings, tie the AT right into that curriculum. And I don't see that happening. And so therefore, you don't have that connection of, it's like, yeah, we have to do AT, and then here's our curriculum. And then you're leaving it to the teachers to have to put that link together. And sometimes they don't have time, or they don't have that connection. And so we've got to be able to find leadership that facilitates that UDL and that it's actually tied to the curriculum, which is not what I'm actually seeing. It's like, yeah, we're going in, we're doing all this UDL school, we're all UDL. Yeah, but how are you actually tying that UDL to the curriculum? Which is a weird question, because it should just be a given, but it's almost like they're not. And so your new teachers are going to these curriculum specific trainings, and they're not showing them right from the beginning how to put it all together. And if we did it from the beginning, then you wouldn't have to retrofit it later, which is UDL, but it's not, I don't see it taught that way.
I think going back to talking about capacity building and expert model and, things like that, as far as losing people. And Kelly even said, like, the teacher turnover and helping support. And it's an issue on different levels. You have the complex students, you know, that need, you know, very specific interventions. And then you have, you know, students with learning disabilities and just overall district-wide, you know, issues. And I think some of the things that we think, you know, how do we get it to be sustainable? And I think I love that topic and area. And I think I always think of things this way, but I think that sometimes specialists, therapists, teachers, where we don't give enough time for those that do have the expertise and the knowledge to be doing the things that they need to do while spending the time to also be building capacity and professional development for the district. That we should be really working on preparing for the fact that we're not going to be there someday. Like, and I think that sometimes, and even, you know, Shannon, you said, find the people that are invested are going to be there. You don't know. And I think that sometimes you do, right? You have the person that's like, I'm staying in this school district. I am not leaving. My kids are here, or whatever. And it's like, great. But I think on the mass thing, so many things happen in life that you have no idea of what's going to happen in so many situations. And it's like, we have to always be preparing that to train the people around us as if we're not going to be there. And so I think some of the really great people in school districts that are in AT, AAC specific roles that have been there for a while, they're overloaded with supporting students and information. And I think from an administrator standpoint of understanding that workload, you know, model, and the fact that they should be given time for building that, you know, capacity for when they aren't there, or when the teachers aren't, you know, really thinking about equally serving the students in a direct way, but then also in a very like, how is all of this going to go on without me? How are we, you know, building, you know, the policies and procedures and guides in districts and the resources so that they can go on without you? And that's hard to think about if you're completely in the weeds.
Well, and I think the one way I've worked to try to get us out of that weed scenario is, you know, when like there's a district-wide training coming up at the end of the school year, and the presentation that I give is, here are all the UDL tools everyone has access to. Now, in a perfect world, would curriculum department be doing that? Absolutely. But that's not where we're at. And the more teachers, the more gen ed, social study content teacher, or whoever that I can get aware of Snap and Read, co-writer, those kinds of things, and what they can do, the less long-term work we have coming out of our department, right? Because then when I have a student that lands in their class, it's, oh yeah, I remember that program we have to use, you know, just, you know, knowing that they're going to turn their assignments in a different way, or they're going to need them as a PDF so that they can annotate on them. That general level awareness from a UDL perspective is almost where I feel like I can get more bang for my buck, because otherwise, I'm still going to have to go do specialized training, right? Kids who have complex needs are always going to need us. And then trying to kind of loop in, like, all of our teachers at the beginning of the pandemic were required to do some online training that we built in Canvas modules, and module 1 and 2 were about, you know, basic technology available. Module 3 was about UDL that we wrote, that we supported our UDL and AT technology, and module 4 was something different. So every teacher that was there then got some, and then we just have been trying in different ways to get UDL in place, so that, again, we all know that from a UDL perspective, the more that's functioning well, the less accommodations or support we may need to put in, with the exception to kids who have more complex needs.
Interestingly, from the statewide group that I'm a part of that does assistive technology in Wisconsin, we have a really diverse group of people from our Department of Public Instruction. And one of the people in that work group is a library media specialist. And she has had some of the most unique ideas as far as getting assistive technology and UDL type supports out through even like local libraries, school libraries, creating resources within the library system because they have access to common state funds and different things like that. And then within our building, one of my AT colleague had created a list of all of our like online programs like Brain Pop and those types of things. And then like the accessibility features that are built in. And one of the LMS staff got a hold of like the editable version of it. And she has been the one that has been updating that form and kind of taken it upon herself to share it out with her colleagues, which is really nice because, you know, from a building level, we have LMS in all of our buildings. They have a lot of the relationships and they can really push that. And the job of the LMS, I mean, they're not just, you know, using the Dewey Decimal System anymore and shelving books. A lot of their positions have become more of that technical sort of nature. And so they've been invaluable and not somebody that I would have always thought of to rely on for some of those AT and UDL type supports. So just wanted to kind of throw that out as another idea.
I just wanted to throw in there, I think there should be more partnerships like with the library media specialists and the ed tech, just because they are highlighting all of the programs that provide accessibility features that are already built in. And many of our states are using them. However, the caveat is like, I think Jennifer was mentioning, we are the ones that have to remind them like, here's how you would use this with a student with disabilities. And so that we are kind of bringing it back into, it provides engagement and accessibility and the preferences that we all like to customize these tools. However, you know, we need to always bring it back to like, and how are you reaching every student or every consumer or whatever the thing is, so that again, we're thinking, you know, for many of our more complex bodied individuals, you know, like how are we addressing that and when do we add more?
So I guess I have a question that's more specific to the study group online, just so that we could take some information forward as we start to reflect on what we may, you know, do in the future. And I know that we have people at varying levels of participation, but I'm wondering how people respond to how the posts are presented. So for example, we've tried some posts as just kind of open-ended questions to participate in. We've tried some, Stacy started us out on doing some posts as polls. So like looking at the common errors and the indicators and doing those as polls. And I just wonder if people have any feedback or advice for us on those types of postings. And if it isn't anything that you've seen, because I know like, everybody's been crazy busy, what is your general impression about participating, your level of participating when you see things that are open-ended versus things that are more specific, like a poll to respond to? What gets you more involved with things online that way?
Kelly, you may hate my answer, but
No, we want to hear it because you've got 5 rounds going.
It depends. Okay.
It's the Joy Zabala answer.
Yeah. So there's some content that leads very clearly to what would you do here, and could be like a poll or could be a quick feedback. And there are some questions that I find like the more open-ended you make it, the more likely, like if I look back at rounds 2 or 3 or 4 of the comprehensive literacy for all book study, I do, before I start a new round, look at what post got the most engagement, right? What post got no engagement or very little engagement. And if it got very little engagement, it doesn't mean they didn't want to engage. It means I asked the question the wrong way, right? So I think looking back at how the, like, what material in a content area adds or leads to a question type, and the level engagement you had, like with polls, is it, often if I ask a question, then I will ask another question in that same group study that allows people to expound upon, or, give some other narrative things, or open it for questions, because in a poll, you can post a comment that's a question about that content, but like trying to give some, again, like UDL, multiple means of representation and expression. I think the more that we do that, the more likely you're going to capture the participation in a way that the participants feel like they can or want to respond. Because I think there have been some questions I've asked in the other book study that have just bought, like the way that I asked the question just did not work. And it's partly why I've kind of shifted to this who, why, how version in round 5, is like something about the content, or what, how, why. I think, just some kind of structure so that there's some predictability across the chapters, but that the content information changes, if that makes sense.
Now, I think you really hit on one of the things that I've been trying to reflect on throughout these last 3 months is how much is the balance of the predictability, like you say, right? How the professional developer in me wants to have this consistency in format, like all of the indicators are addressed this way, all of the, common errors are done this way. But does that also lead to like same of the same, right? That piece of it. So it's a very interesting balance to try and find. So yeah, so there's no wrong answer to it. It is about what are you, and I love hearing, what you've been finding out with your 5 rounds of the same topic. How do we make this decision? How do we start talking about what will we do for the next round, if there's a next round, right?
And I think it definitely, man, please learn from my mistakes, because this has been a trial and error from the very beginning. And I think that, again, going back and looking at the questions you posed, and sometimes the best questions I get are from other participants' posted questions in previous rounds, things that led off to a really big discussion. And not necessarily like controversial things, but things that led to a robust discussion are probably going to be the similar kind of like drawing in question that you would get participants to gather, and having that balance across both the entire book study and the individual chapters of opportunities for quick responses. Maybe somebody can just log in and be like, oh, this is my thought on a poll, but having that extended, or like, I want to drag you deeper. It's those levels of questioning that I'm going to forget the name of, that we want to make sure we're not just staying at, define, that we're getting into higher level questioning as well.
And I see Irene asked, is there any live pieces on the book study? This is it, Irene. This is what we got so far. Is that we've had 2 of these from AT Town Hall, and we've had the AT chat on Wednesday. We've had, I think, 1 of those. So that's what we've attempted so far, and to have a short meetup at ATIA during the Friday night event.
So for me, just one person, I have issues around some of the organizational things, and I'm more of an auditory learner. So if it was like, we're gonna do these chapters this month, and there was a 30 to 60-minute live piece, kind of like these, that kind of say, here's the stuff we're gonna go to. And then I know the town hall is doing another book, and Mike has put up a Padlet that kind of has, I can always go there and see and find all my information instead of having to look through Facebook or look through whatever to locate where are those questions. And I'm sure there's probably a better way that I could have it set up, but I haven't done that. I'm guessing I'm not alone. So structurally, I think those pieces would, at least for somebody like me, would be really handy. Did I scare everybody off?
No, I think those are really
No.
great suggestions. And, like we've talked about, this is really the first time we've done this. So we're clearly learning as we go along. One of the things that's interesting is across the QIAT leadership group, there's a variety of us who have hosted various chapters. So you're going to see a little bit of difference in the different chapters about how the different leaders are facilitating and guiding the conversation. So we're learning from each other as we go. I really admire the folks who jump in for the very first 2 chapters going, now we're doing the book study. We threw them into the deep end and said, please do this on our behalf. We're going to watch and learn. So as we've gone through, we're learning a lot, and we haven't had a chance to sit and analyze. As we do our plan, do, study, act cycle, we're in the do part, and now we have to study and figure out what comes next, and then act upon that, figure out how we do things differently. So all of the input that you're giving us, all of this we're taking in, we're thinking about it, we've made some changes as we've gone along. And trying to be more interactive and give more opportunities for different kinds of interaction. So keep the comments coming so that we can continue to build this and make this a better project for all of us, both us on the leadership team and the QIAT community that we asked to play with us.
Yeah, it was in fact one of the suggestions from our first AT town hall that we had once the book study had gotten started, that where the Padlets started getting posted on the QIAT list because not everybody was into Facebook, right? Like not everybody wanted to, Mike Murata himself didn't want to get online to do it through Facebook. And so I think Brian started us out with doing that. So then we've been trying then intermittently to do a general post on the QIAT list. And I think we see a little bit of an uptick when we do that. I can't say that it's been overwhelming in any of the chapters. And with the links to the online QIAT matrices, we probably get 3 to 4 people use those each chapter to get a taste of them. And then some people are jumping from the individual ones to a full, the links to the full set from there.
And the other piece of data you might pull if you do this again is if you post a link to anything and you use a bit.ly or other shortener that you can go and see how many people are actually accessing that link. And from where, that's always interesting information. And it does give you a pull for like, are people actually even accessing the resources that I'm posting? Or is it more worth it to maintain them in the files of the group in Facebook and point people there versus having them go outside to a link?
So it's about the data.
I think you could say that across the board. You know, we want good data for AT. We want good data for AT professional development. And again, you know, I'm kind of on that data nerd end of things. So I am going to analyze what drew people in one round. And I also think it's the only way to reinvent the wheel through rounds and keep participants that were in round 1, 2, 3, whatever, engaged going forward, and still, like, you know, like Jennifer was saying, you know, still she jumps in and participates in certain chapters without it being the exact same questions posted over and over again.
Gonna make sure we save the chat. Lots of good suggestions in chat. Thanks, Irene.
So one of the questions that came up earlier, and I'd like folks to give us some feedback in the comments, is about what time of year would work well for this. We started in January and stretched it out. Now we're wrapping up in June, I think. So, and as Kelly said, everything's still going to be there. We're not making it disappear. So we can still go in and make comments. You know, I was thinking this morning about something about transition. I was putting my shoes on. I went, wait, you know what we needed to talk about? Well, the transition chapter's over, but I can still go back and make that comment, and it'll still be active. So, December. That's Shannon. I'm so confused. So give us some ideas, and we will try to do, as the leadership team, we're going to try to meet needs. We have fun with helping folks learn things. So,
Joan, the Maycember is a lot of the parents who have children in school activities who are also professionals end up having to close out May events and start summer events all within that month of May. And so it gets really overwhelming and crazy. And so when I used to work in the schools, I used to bring my mom down to actually take over being a parent to my children for about 2 weeks. So I could do all of the professional things and keep my kids engaged in their activities. And so a lot of the moms have nicknamed it here, it's culturally, December and Maycember, because those are those 2 months that are pivotal in regards to there's so many extra things that it's hard to do your regular life.
Kelly says that's what she's doing, and it's what I'm doing now too. There's a lot of driving the grandkids to various activities this next 2 weeks while the school year wraps up. So yeah, I like that. I'm gonna put that in my vocabulary now. Well, thank you guys for the conversation. Thank you for giving us input and helping us think about this. And thank you all for engaging. This has been terrific, and we appreciate all the input and thoughts and ways to share the good work of QIAT.
Yeah. Thanks, and have a great week. We'll turn it back to Naomi for anything she's got to remind people of for AT